So before I begin, I just want to say I actually do know some things about activism. I'm not just a politician. I spent 20 years in the environmental movement before I got elected. And it's created certain odd contradictions. So when I was first sworn in as a city councilor, you go down and you get this pass that lets you, gives you access throughout the building. And the guy who was giving me the pass had actually 4 years earlier assisted the Toronto police in arresting me and removing me from city council. So I've seen it from both sides. I want to talk, I've been involved in a lot of campaigns over the years. What I want to try to do is to talk about a few things that are always in my mind when I'm designing a campaign. I want to start with two caveats before I get there, though. The first is I believe very strongly there is no right way to be an activist. So if you choose, ignore everything I say. The second thing is, and this is following on the introduction we had today, it's a deep belief of mine that activism is something that we all have a duty to. And I view it as an extension of citizenship, not citizenship in the sense of the government says you're a citizen, but just simply being a citizen in our society. We all, what freedoms we do enjoy, what infrastructure we do have, the fact that when we turn on the tap there's water is all due to someone having been an activist somewhere in our history. And if you want to pass those benefits of civilization and society on, you're called upon to be an activist in your life. Those are the two thoughts I want you to have in mind. So when I'm designing a campaign or when I'm working with a group of activists who are coming to see me as a politician and saying, we want to get this change, we're thinking about a campaign, there are certain things I always have in mind. And the first is something that's not immediately obvious, but I think it's actually the most important thing, which is to give yourself permission. Our society and the way we talk about how power and politics operate operates on a notion that people in elected office, people with legal or scientific or governance expertise know how things should be run. People who you see as pundits on the media have superior knowledge to the people like us who are watching the pundits. And it's actually very difficult for most people to believe that they too can be a decision maker, they too can be a spokesperson, they too can go and learn the science if they're working on an environmental issue, say. It's something we're all capable of. It's not only a duty that we have, it's something that all of us are capable of doing. And I've trained an awful lot of young activists over my life. This is the hardest lesson to teach. Do you actually have permission to be a leader in your community, to contribute to decision making? You can teach yourself, you can build your skills, you can become an organizer, you can become an activist. That's the first thing to have in mind designing a campaign. The second thing is actually kind of the opposite of that, which is another common belief in our society, is that because it's one person, one vote, all opinions are equal, right? Well, that's actually not true. The informed opinion is actually more valuable. So you have to take yourself seriously as an activist and learn your topic. You have to learn the fact based around it. You have to learn the power structures around it. You have to learn a whole bunch of different things. Simply saying, I think climate change should come to an end isn't sufficient grounds to be an effective activist. Okay, so you have to take yourself and the issue seriously enough to get past that, to say, I am going to become good at this. It's like thinking, before I go up and play music on stage, I should learn an instrument. The third thing that I think everyone should do in designing a campaign, and you heard about it in our earlier presentation, it wasn't explicitly said, but you have to assess the forces. In every decision about how we run our society, a group of people have an interest in how that system works. They have an interest in how the military industrial system works. They have an interest in the fossil fuel industry. They have an interest in whatever it is. And in designing a campaign, you simply sit down and make a list of every organization, every entity, every group of people who has an interest in that issue. And you ask yourself, both what's the long-term interest they have? Maybe it's a corporation and it's making a profit. And what's the short-term interest they have? And often you'll find that they're different. And the goal of assessing the politics of an issue is to find a way to get people in that tension between how the issue works today and their long-term interest to move on to your side. How do you get me, as someone who, likes to get reelected, but has taken a position different than the one you have at council, to think about my long-term interest means being on your side. And you go through the workers in the industry, the banks who are financing a corporation, all of the people who live in a community that's impacted by the behavior of a corporation. You exhaustively analyze who all the actors are, and I guarantee you that will help you find your goal in designing your campaign. The next thing you need to think about is campaigns take resources and they take skills. And you have to find a group of people, maybe in an existing organization, maybe you form one, that have the right set of skills to move those actors on your issue. The skills might be fundraising, the skills might be community organizing, the skills might be in writing press releases, the skills might be in doing research and writing reports. You have to think about all of those skills the same way that you would assemble skills if you were municipal government building a subway station, right? You find the engineers, you find the lawyers, you find the real estate guys, you bring together all the talent. And if you don't have the talent, you figure out how you're gonna train yourselves to get those skills. The next thing that's important, and I mentioned this a bit off the top, is shun orthodoxy. There are some people in this world who believe that there is one right way to make political change. I believe they're wrong. I know they're wrong because one time I was handcuffed to the roof of the Premier's bus during an election campaign with another guy. We were protesting nuclear power in the province of Ontario during an election campaign. And, we stopped his bus for a good 8 hours. So we had time to talk that through. And he was an orthodox Marxist, and he believed that power was organized in a certain way, and that if you did this and that, inevitably, over time, the political forces will bring us to the revolution and justice. And I was actually arguing, no, the future is unwritten, and I won the argument. So that's how I know. Yeah. And the final thing is, you have to have real goals. And this is for a lot of us the hardest piece. I have all kinds of things I would like to see in the world. Some of them I know I will not live to see. I do not believe I will live to see complete economic equality. There will be poverty, but I'm getting on, and there will still be poverty when I'm dead. But there are things I can do around poverty in very specific ways, perhaps investing in low-income communities that are socially marginalized and that have a lot of violence. Perhaps I can get the municipal government to make investments in those communities so that people feel that the society values them, so that they aren't exposed to as much violence, so they have resiliency, so they have resources, so that they can actually imagine that contributing to society without a gun in their hand is valuable and worth their time. And I can put that campaign together. But I have to be realistic. Do I have the right resources to do that? Do I have a pathway to doing that, given where all the power lies and where all the interests lie? And then I have to ruthlessly commit myself to that campaign goal. sometimes activists feel that they have done the job when they have made the argument. And I always reject that. You have not done your job when you have made the argument. You have done your job when you have set a goal that you know you can achieve and then achieved it. So those are some of the things I have in mind whenever I design a campaign or when a community group comes and asks me, you know, how do I make this change? And I look forward to discussing this further during the question and answer period. Thank you.